All right. Hey, welcome to Helena Hustle. I'm here with Josh Schultz, and he is the president of the Queen City Bitcoin Meetup.
I wouldn't call myself the
What
president.
would you call yourself, Josh?
I started the Queen City Bitcoin meetup just out of, a need for networking with Bitcoiners locally. And so it was something that I heard on from my friends who have podcasts over the years, and they talked about if you don't have a podcast started in your town, you should start one.
Mm-hmm.
And or a meetup.
A meetup, yeah.
And so May 2 years ago, so this will be 2 years,
Okay.
I started the Bitcoin meetup in Helena, and it was probably maybe in June that I had someone come to my meetup from Bozeman,
Oh, okay.
and so I helped them start a meetup in Bozeman, and that's still going as well.
Oh, fantastic.
Shortly after that, we helped Missoula and Coeur d'Alene start a meetup as well. So
Fantastic. So before we dive too much into that, let's hear your two truths and a lie, Josh.
okay,
What do you got for
me? Two truths and a lie. So I started a very successful Bitcoin company a few years ago.
Okay.
I grew up on the second largest hog farm in Tennessee, and I've been mining Bitcoin since 2013.
I'm going to say the first one is the lie.
Correct.
Okay. I figured I would have known that about you, but the second largest hog farm in Tennessee.
Correct.
How many hogs is that?
Oh, so we were sending about 400 a week to market.
Oh my gosh. Wow. How long does it take to grow up a pig?
So, that's a good question. It's probably about 10 months.
Oh, so you're just constantly,
Correct.
I mean, like here you calve in the spring and you sell in the fall. It's not like that for hogs.
Correct.
It's
yeah.
each week you have a new.
Yep.
Wow, 400 a week.
Yep.
And so you grew up working hard.
I did, yes.
Uh-huh. Okay. And what brought you to Helena?
Snowboarding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Started out in Missoula,
Mm-hmm.
moved here from Tennessee, and met my wife there, and we moved to Helena and started a family.
Oh, right on.
Yep.
Right on. And then you started mining in 2013.
I did.
That's awesome. What were you mining with?
So it was the Butterfly Labs.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the model.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
So for people who don't know what Bitcoin mining is, I think that's kind of a sticky point or a confusing point for people. How would you explain that to them?
I mean, in layman's terms, it's like a whole bunch of people standing in a room throwing darts at a dartboard, and the person who gets the closest to the bullseye wins that block.
Mm-hmm. When some Bitcoin
That's right.
is rewarded with Bitcoin.
That's correct.
Well, how many Bitcoins could a person, what was the payout back in 2013?
So if you solo mined a block, then you earn 50 Bitcoin.
50 at the time.
50 at the time.
And now that's down to
6.25.
right?
Yeah.
What was it? What year did you first get introduced into Bitcoin?
The first time I saw it was in 2010 on slashdot.org.
2010.
That's when I first read about it.
Did you write it off, or were you interested in it even at that point?
I thought it was baloney video game money.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And when did that change for you?
So saw it again on Slashdot. Read it another time in 2011.
On Reddit? Is that what you said? Or
No,
you read about it?
On Slashdot.
Gotcha. Which is what? I'm not familiar with that.
And that could have been Engadget or Gizmodo, one of those two websites too. I know it was on Slashdot the first time I saw it.
What is Slashdot?
It's like a news for nerds.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you were into Linux, open source software, programming, networking, it was kind of a must that you read /.org from the 2000s, well past 2012, 2013.
Okay.
And so probably in 2012, the third time that I read an article about Bitcoin, I dove into the white paper and let that sit, with my brain, a few weeks. And then it just came out of nowhere that, you know what, I think I need to figure this out, because this could be really huge if it's successful.
So, and can you tell people what the white paper is?
So the Bitcoin white paper was what the creator Satoshi Nakamoto wrote to basically describe like what Bitcoin was and how it
would function, all the rules, all of that.
Correct. And again, like the white paper is more about like Bitcoin as an idea, so,
not the code behind it.
Correct. Yeah.
And I mean, this was pretty revolutionary at the time. It was nothing new to try to create a digital form of currency. What was different about this that maybe had the light bulb turn on for you, which made you think, maybe this is going to be different. Maybe this solves a lot of the problems that the previous iterations weren't able to solve.
And I didn't know too much about the previous iterations of Bitcoin, and I always get it confused. I think it was Hashcash before there was Bitcoin, and basically it was cryptographers who were trying to solve the problem of not being able to mitigate email as spam. So if I sent you an email, then that had some cryptography in it, and you knew it was from me. And then you might say, well, I'm not going to accept any emails from people who I don't trust that have that cryptographic signature. And then they discovered they could use it as money. Well, then the problem was the Byzantine general's problem was, if you can make it fast if it's centralized, and if it's decentralized, then it can't be fast. And I forget the third one there, scalable.
Okay.
So
it solved some problems that made it, this is kind of the first time that it's going to be viable, safe. People can't double spend this money, and maybe it could catch on.
That's correct. It was the first time someone had solved the Byzantine general's problem.
And once you started getting interested in it, was it gradual over the next few years, or was it just kind of like starting a fire?
Well, originally I saw it as I can buy a Bitcoin miner. So at the time, you could, in the beginning, you could basically take a desktop computer and mine it. And then folks figured out that they could use graphics cards to mine it. And then someone came up with the idea of putting the software on a microchip, and then stacking those microchips across a circuit board. And so that was when the ASIC mining boom began, was probably 2012, 2013. Someone had designed the chip, and they started producing that Bitcoin miner. And
a miner is essentially it's a computer that you hook up to the internet, and it does all the work. It does all the math, which is how Bitcoin enters into the ecosystem.
Correct. Yep. It's doing the guessing game for finding the hash to the next block, which is it's a hard problem. And then if you get it wrong, which most all the hashes are wrong,
right?
you have to move on to the next one super fast.
So these computers need to be getting faster and faster and more efficient, and then it's going to increase the likelihood of earning Bitcoin. Now, most people, they connect their computers to thousands of other computers, and then if anybody in their pool gets the block, then it gets spread out, which is a safe way to just say, hey, I'm going to plug my computer in, and with my electricity costs, there's a good chance I'm going to be able to make some money off of this.
That's correct.
Or some Bitcoin.
That's correct.
Okay.
So there's a halving event that is about to happen in a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. So this will be the fourth halving.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, I think, was in 2013, and then 2017, and then 2021, and this will be, I think, I could have those dates wrong.
Must have been 2020, right? Every 4 years?
That's right. It's about every 3.5, 4 years.
2016, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you want to explain what the halving is?
So that's where the block reward gets cut in half. So instead of 50 Bitcoin, which was the reward in the beginning, it goes to 25, and then 12.5, 6.25, and then this next one will be 3.125 Bitcoin for every 10-minute block.
Mm-hmm. So the purpose of that is, hey, let's get a bunch of Bitcoin out into the ecosystem, and then over time it's going to scale back so that it's just barely trickling in. And people who are concerned about Bitcoin, something I've heard people say is, well, maybe the creator could just say, well, one of the things that makes Bitcoin is it's scarce. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And some people say, oh, well, they could just change it to make it 40 million. When in reality, that's, for people who understand it, that's not really a concern. But at this point, how many Bitcoin of the 21 million are in circulation?
I think there's about 19.3 million in circulation right now.
So it's almost all out. Over the next 100 or so years, it will just slowly start to, the last of the Bitcoin will be mined.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I think his idea, and I say he, could have been anyone, Satoshi Nakamoto. I think the idea there was this may not catch on for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, honestly, he may have had, I keep saying they may have had the idea that this would always be mined on computers,
mm-hmm.
not ASICs.
Right.
So I think that's maybe something that wasn't anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
But again, once he put the software out there, then it's kind of ours
mm-hmm.
as humans to figure out what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So the minute somebody started putting the software on a chip, that changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish it wasn't that way, but also it was quite an opportunity for those people who did take advantage of it.
Right. Yeah. If you have faster horses at the beginning, you're gonna take advantage, get paid off for that. So
yeah.
Now, a lot of the terms we're discussing are probably new for people who aren't too familiar with Bitcoin. Talking about hash and halving and blocks. What is? Tell me about the Queen City Bitcoin meetup. What sorts of things do you guys discuss there?
So it's really just like a social networking event.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we'll talk about really sophisticated subjects,
complex.
Yes, related to Bitcoin, of course. So sometimes we'll discuss like businesses surrounding Bitcoin, maybe
mm-hmm.
Bitcoin companies.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many different subjects that come up in a Bitcoin meetup because Bitcoin is so multidisciplinary,
mm-hmm.
and I think that's one of the biggest things I think people don't understand is over the years, I myself, as well as my other friends who are Bitcoiners, I've learned about energy, macroeconomics, how money works, how banking works, on a very in-depth scale.
Right.
Philosophy. It's super it's mathematics, it's computer programming. I can just probably keep naming those. And so you can imagine when people come to a Bitcoin meetup, usually they don't know what's going to be discussed at that Bitcoin meetup. And I think the idea is to meet them wherever they are.
Sure. So that was my next question. If somebody's listening and they say, oh, I'd love to go check that out, see what that's like. But let's say they're very unfamiliar with Bitcoin. It's overwhelming. It's confusing. Is that still a good place for someone to come?
I think that's a perfect place for people to come. You just have to show up and put your hand out and introduce yourself and start asking questions. I think everyone there is eager to meet new people who want to learn about Bitcoin, because we've all had those same questions coming in. Is what is this and how does it work? And so I think everybody enjoys having new folks come in and ask those same questions.
Everybody's very welcoming every time I've been there. Now, in the crypto space, there's a lot of scams. There's a lot of scammers. Do you guys talk about other cryptocurrencies, or is it just Bitcoin?
I'm always open to talk about any cryptocurrencies. We try to keep it Bitcoin related, but of course, people have questions about the other cryptocurrencies as well. And I've been doing I've done other cryptocurrencies myself. I'm only Bitcoin now, but also I have to be open to answering questions about Dogecoin and whatever coins.
Yeah, people, that's a good way to look at it. People aren't always at the same point. And like you said, 5 years ago or whatever, you maybe had a different viewpoint. But as you learn more about it, seems like most people just learn how different Bitcoin is from everything, and why it's superior in every way. So
yeah.
Also, if somebody wanted to, do you have any resources, whether it's a podcast or an online course or a book, where someone that doesn't understand Bitcoin at all can go and get their feet wet and start to understand it? Because once again, people hear about it and it can be overwhelming, and it's easier to just kind of say, I'll stick with dollars and gold, and I don't need to learn more about that because it's so complex.
It's hard for me to point to one source. I love the Swan Canon. So I think you can Google that and that comes up. And that's like an introductory course to Bitcoin. And then River Financial is another company that has, I think, good resources for a beginner. It's really hard to Google Bitcoin and figure out like where you should go to learn.
Yeah.
Because the scammers have learned that they can get into those Google search results, and so they take advantage of it. So it's really hard to find like a good resources for learning Bitcoin just by Googling or searching on YouTube.
Right. So the Swan Canon or River Bitcoin, is that what it's called?
River Financial is a
Financial.
Bitcoin company, yes.
Okay, perfect. And for the average person who maybe hasn't learned about Bitcoin and they're comfortable with their current financial, workings, why do you think it might be helpful or beneficial for someone to learn more about Bitcoin or get involved in Bitcoin or start saving, some of their portfolio in Bitcoin?
I I think it's important. That's a good question. Well, I think it's important because it is so multidisciplinary, and I think it's important for us as Americans. So we have the U.S. dollar, which I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. But I think it's also important that we have a redundant money, and that's what Bitcoin has done for me. Is it's shown the light at the current financial system and how it works. So what is the Federal Reserve Bank? What is the U.S. dollar? Like those are all questions that you're going to hear most Bitcoiners ask and talk about at a Bitcoin meetup. Maybe not everyone, but occasionally that's definitely going to come up. And I think that's a really important thing is we've all just taken money for granted. What is the U.S. dollar though?
Right.
How does it work?
It works. We just use it. We don't ask questions, right?
That's right. It's on my phone. It's on my credit cards. I can go to the bank and get it, and it just works. And I don't want to think anything else about it. I just want it to work. And I think that's great. But also, like when you see Bitcoin and you ask all these questions of what is it and how does it work, then you turn right around and say the same thing about U.S. dollar because you realize you've never done it.
Exactly. I know a lot of people are concerned with the amount of money that the Fed is printing, especially it seems to be accelerating. Do you feel like Bitcoin is a good hedge against inflation?
I think it's important to not get too stuck on any one narrative because I've heard that narrative before that Bitcoin is an inflation hedge. And the minute that it's not, then they say, oh, see, it's not. Like it doesn't work. It went down 80%
compared to,
and so I see that. And that's why I never want to get stuck on narratives and explaining to people like, oh, Bitcoin is a great hedge against inflation. Well,
it might at times, it might not at times.
It might not be. That's right.
Over time, it seems like it is, but on any given day or month, it might not be because it's cyclical.
That's right. And it will also humble you.
Whenever you think you know what the price is going to do, it decides to surprise you, right?
And that's one thing. Another thing that I've learned from Bitcoin is to be humble, because you're almost not. I don't care how smart you are, how much work you do. You're likely never going to know everything about Bitcoin, and that's what makes it so fascinating for me. Is there's always things to learn, and there's always something to humble you. Just when you think you've got it figured out. Right.
Absolutely. Josh, how often do you guys meet?
Once a month. Third Wednesday every month.
What time's that
at? 6 p.m.
And the location changes from time to time?
Yeah, it's Lewis and Clark Library.
Okay, great. And is there a best way to get in touch with you or with the group? What would somebody do?
So the Meetup app, you can download that on Android and iOS. Let's see, Bitcoiner events, it's listed there. So if you search for Bitcoin Meetup Montana, you're going to see like Helena Bozeman, Missoula come up, maybe Kalispell as well.
My brother, he's involved in that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good. I like to hear that.
Yeah, good. All right, Josh. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom about Bitcoin, and you're doing a good work. You know, you're not getting paid for this, and you go out, sacrifice your time once a month to be around other like-minded individuals and answer questions, and I appreciate all that you're doing.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the podcast. I've watched a few different episodes, and I'm certainly honored to be on the show. And I can't say thanks enough.
Yeah, great having you.
Yeah.